Hi,
Hello, how are you?
good. How are you?
Good. We are live right now on YouTube and we're recording. So, Stephanie, I'm so happy to see you here. It's always fun to chat with you. So, yeah,
I'm so happy to be here. Well, at any chance I get to chat with you, we still need
right.
to do it. We still need to do a Zoom lunch.
We've done a few Zoom lunches and we go on for hours.
I
That's
know.
my only problem, right?
I
Is
know.
that,
Well, we should make them like Zoom cocktail hours.
well, that could go on for like days
That's true.
potentially, I think, for us.
That's true. That's true. We always get into the best conversations.
We really do. And I know, though, you're a very busy designer and business owner and so smart. And let me actually just kind of jump in and introduce you. I've got
Oh, sure.
many things going on here. We've changed our tech. As you know, we had some tech issues
Yes.
doing an Instagram live. So
Yes. Because of my phone. My
no, no,
phone.
no, no. It's many different things, and not the least of which is every different software gets hacked and
Right.
like all kinds of crazy stuff. So
Right.
there were several fixes that we had, and it's like, oh, that one got hacked, so we can't use that anymore. Oh,
Right.
that one's down. Oh, what?
And I can
So,
always use Zoom. So,
well, yeah, and we thought like this is very seamless, and sometimes changing, like doing the Instagram lives are has been really good, but like broadcasting live to YouTube and then putting it on Instagram and then who knows what else. Like sometimes when you change the tech, it changes the effect in general and it's more
right.
effective. So who knows?
Right. Right.
But all this to say, I'm having to move screens and find my notes and all that kind of good stuff.
No worries. I'm
So
ready. I'm ready whenever you are.
we're in it. We're in it, girl. We're just,
You're
this
in
is
it.
like casual conversations. Like that's, I always say
Right.
like, I'm not doing a podcast and I'm not, but I kind of am. It's kind of that
Right.
because we're talking about real stuff, but
Right.
we're also just chatting. It's
Right.
much less structured. But I do want to like introduce you for real and I don't want to like miss anything because you are amazing and truly
Aw,
one of the smartest people I know. So,
you
and I
so
adore you.
much. Thank
So, everybody, if you don't know me, I'm Deb Mitchell. I own Deb Mitchell Writing. I work with interior designers for really marketing, positioning, visibility, and messaging. I've actually expanded my offerings recently because we know that having great messaging and great website copy is good, but we have to bring people to it. So I'm really working to solve those issues. I've known for a long time what you need, and now I'm finally rolling that out. So, and Stephanie is just a wonderful interior designer in Baltimore, Maryland, Stephanie Gamble. So Stephanie owns Stephanie Gamble Interiors. Um, and unlike most of her peers in interior design, she didn't start out drawing living rooms and kitchens. She started out drawing molecular models.
right.
That is one of the most amazing things about her, I think, that she started out with a degree in biology and even spent time working in research and development
Yeah.
before she decided she wanted to go on a more creative path. So she really took that big, wonderful brain of hers and applied it to owning and running this business.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to her today. She's had Stephanie Gamble Interior since 2003, actually opened it as a showroom, a brick and mortar at first,
Yep.
in a really great location in Baltimore, right? And she called it the
Yes.
house downtown,
Yep.
and that expanded into the interior side of it more so.
Right.
And now she has a beautiful showroom and a team and has recently brought her husband on board.
Yes.
We were chatting recently, and Stephanie was telling me how much the clarity of her and her husband, Tom, writing his job description and some of the foundational documents and foundational ideas of like your culture and your mission and all of those kinds of things brought so much clarity around how to bring him into the business and how to make your, I mean, it's kind of like the marriage saving and the business saving thing, right? Because
Right.
it's like, okay, this is your lane, this is my lane in this business, and this is how we can make this work.
Right.
Stephanie and I worked together I don't even know how many years ago. It was probably during COVID, which is why I can't remember. That was all a blur.
And that was a blur.
And did her messaging and her website copy then. And I'm guessing that was, something of a springboard into, thinking about your business in these ways. Am I right in thinking that when we started working together, you didn't have much of those foundational elements in place anywhere other than in your head?
Right. Yes. And working with you was definitely a springboard, foundational. But it was really when I used a lot of that, but really when my husband came on board is when I also have I sought out the help of an amazing business coach too.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
can't discount that because that
Yes.
was
I forgot that part. Yes.
enormous,
Yes.
enormous. So the wonderful Gail Doby
Yes.
is my coach of Pearl Collective. And so when I knew Tom was coming on board, I was like, I need help. So we did fly out to Colorado and spend some time with Gail. And she really helped us solidify some of these, even diving deeper into some of these foundational things of a business that, to be really honest, Deb, for probably the first 10 years of my business, I had always, you didn't hear about it as much, but you did hear, whispers about, oh, having your values identified, having a culture statement. And I was always like,
Yeah.
whatever. What
Yeah.
is that?
I'm running my business. I got to
I
serve
don't have
clients
time.
here.
Like, I don't have
Right.
time. But I have to tell you, if you're going to really think about growth and expansion, as much as it's painful to do, because I'm not a writer, which is why people hire people like you, but really getting really serious about who am I? Who is this company serving? Where do we belong? Who is our ideal client? I know people hear about that all the time, but really not just having it here, but really writing it down. And I got to tell you, the really difficult part about it is are those values, because there are so many words in the English dictionary that you could pick as your values, and you
Mhm.
really can get really caught up and be like, well, I have 10. You can't have 10. You really need to just really be serious and figure out what those are. And then you have to define them, because that is going to, it really does drive everything you do. It
Mhm.
drives your mission, your mission statement. It drives your website, your branding, writing a good help wanted ad, writing a good job description is based on that. So again, like I said, for a very long time I was like, that's which a lot of people I think still do. Because I got to tell you, it was time consuming, and it's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But now that it is done, anything that I want to do, as far any type of collateral that I want to do, as far as like a job description, if we're looking to hire a new employee, putting together that once you had that, then you can put together a really good employee handbook.
Anything. Yes.
Anything, hiring, it really is an opening for even the questions that you're going to ask people that you're interviewing. Because you want someone on your team. If they don't share your same values, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to have this. If they don't understand and have the desire to make people happy, then
Mhm.
maybe this isn't the right fit, right?
1,000%. Yes. And this is why I wanted to bring you on to talk about this, because you're so eloquently speaking to, in a little bit different, there's parallels with the work that I do, and then it kind of forks off a little bit because I do more with the client facing kind of stuff and the marketing
Right.
and that kind of thing. But then you have your in-house kind of stuff, which is kind of the stuff that you're talking about, the inside voice versus the, outside
Correct.
public facing voice. But it's all that same thing, in that it is such hard foundational work. And this is why I know people don't like to spend time and money on strategy. But this is why it's important, because if you don't invest in thinking about it deeply, at some point, if you don't invest in that and take the time and spend the money to have somebody help you with it, you're going to be like pinging around all over the place and reinventing the wheel all the time when you need to create these whatever, whether
Right.
you're creating a blog post for your clients, or a help wanted ad.
Right.
So I absolutely love that you're saying this and completely agree. And I want to go back to the values, like you're talking about that being so at the hub, and totally agree. For me, for writing marketing stuff, a lot at the hub is like the differentiators. What makes you different as a designer?
Right.
So that's what
Right.
it is for marketing. The values matter, but it's a piece of messaging, and it's as the values what the clients care about. Because sometimes the clients don't care about what you care about in-house and with your team quite the same way. So
Right.
do you mind sharing with us what values you did choose? And I agree with you, by
Sure.
the way. I always start with like a big list for my clients of values. There are many things, my clients care about kindness. They care about a million different things, but we have
Right.
to whittle it down to the most important. And that's also why it's hard. You got to make decisions and you've got to stand on something.
Right, you do. So when we were going through this exercise of, finding these words, and I'm telling you, like it really, I had to sit on them. I would put the list together and I have them on like a big board that's over in my office,
Mm.
and then I would glance over and before I really made them final, I would glance over and then I would cross out and rewrite, and so it was not something that you can do in an hour,
No,
typically.
no.
Typically, it's not something that can be done in an hour. And I'm a muller. I like to mull on things a little bit before I,
Yeah.
make them so final, like, putting them out into the world or putting them in an employee handbook and really putting them to use. So again, it like took me a long time and a lot, and for me, I wanted these values to not only be internal, but I did want them to be external. So when I was writing them, to me, there was no differentiation. So, like for us, I can just let you know, like you know, and they're really in no form. There's meaning there's not a hierarchy. They're
Yeah, 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 yeah.
equally as important. But relationships are one. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a relationship person. I'm loyal. I so again, but all relationships has to do with my team, and it also has to do with our clients. And not all even our clients, but the people that we work with, our vendors, our
Vendors. Hmm.
builders, all of those things. I am not a bridge burner. Um, I will do anything possible to not burn a bridge. But relationships. So this is just, and you as a writer, this is what we wrote. But so you as a writer can tell me if I did horrible or not. We
Gosh.
said for us, it's relationships are our hallmark and the foundation of our success over the past 22 years. We take pride in our longstanding partnerships with vendors and the deep connections we forge with our clients. For our team, this means fostering an environment of trust and support. For our clients, this means building lasting, genuine relationships through hospitality, going above and beyond to make every client journey memorable and personal.
I love that. And I mean, I can totally see why, especially that you wanted there to be no daylight between the external and the internal list of values,
Right.
even harder. Um, and I think writing is very similar to design in that, in so many ways, but in that for one thing, it's kind of like never done. You could always tweak and change. You could always, so when you're solidifying and making a final decision, it's always like, well, did we do the exact right thing? There's always a point where you have to go, we did the best, like it's good. It's really, really good. It's
Right.
really, really good. Is
Right.
there something we could add, change, whatever? That's
Sure.
always a decision we have to make. I do it every day.
Right.
I'm always like,
Right.
oh, I could change it. Sure. Would changing it make it better? Not necessarily. Same with design, right? Like
Right,
you could make it
exactly. Like,
different.
right, could there possibly be a lamp out there that is, though,
Right?
ungodly amazing and
Right.
even more amazing than ones we've selected, but would it
Exactly.
ultimately change the design? No. And would it possibly take us 25 hours to find it?
Exactly. It's the
Yeah.
same
So,
thing with words. As
right,
long as you have captured the ethos and the essence of what you care about and
right,
what you want your people to care about, like in that particular instance, you did the job. It's like, does it achieve the goal?
right. An example like with that I even have to remind myself is, because as designers, we work with a lot of moving parts that are outside our control.
Yes.
Right? So builders, they really are outside of our control.
Yes.
If they're not employed by me,
Right.
I have no control. Vendors, even though you have long-standing relationships, sometimes you get, a not great customer service
Mm-hmm.
person, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you get, people who just aren't as invested in a project like myself and my team. So I have to constantly sometimes when, a builder is not holding up their end of the bargain. It doesn't always happen because we primarily work with the same builders typically, but sometimes there's projects that come along where we just don't have as much control. You have to kind of remind myself, yeah, I look at these. I look and I'm like, okay, yes, we are about relationships and we are going to do whatever we can for the client to make sure that this project works out well, and that means maintaining a great relationship with maybe people that don't share our values.
Amazing, because you're talking about not only taking these elements that you've created and that these strategic decisions that you've made, these are our values. This is what we stand for, and this is what they mean. And you're
Right?
not just like putting it in a drawer.
No.
You're putting it throughout your documentation and you're going back to it as a touchstone when
Right.
situations arise. And that is the stuff.
Yes.
That is what we're talking about here. That's strategy in action. And strategy plus action equals achieving your goals.
Right. And as a, a leader, reminding those around you, sometimes they also need that reminder. It's not just me. Sometimes, like an example is, we choose our words very carefully here in our firm. We're very thoughtful about the words that we use. There are certain words that we try to limit in our vocabulary, such as no, such
Mhm.
as don't, such
Can't.
as can't. I like to tell a client what we do versus what we don't do, right? So sometimes it's pausing, and that is actually within in one of our like our it's part of our culture. It's actually part of our one of our culture statements of
Mm-hmm.
what we believe.
Mm-hmm.
We wrote down what our beliefs are, and that's one of those beliefs that words matter, and let's be problem solvers.
Yes.
Let's be problem solvers. Let's solve the problem and not dwell in negativity.
I
And
remember that from your messaging that we did together. There was something
yes.
about that that was like coming with the solution, not coming with the problem.
Right, exactly. Yeah, let's be problem solvers and let's focus on positivity. Because one of the things for most homeowners, most clients, the process of a new build or a major renovation are
Mm-hmm.
very, very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think it in terms if I was in their shoes, right? If I was in their shoes, what would I like to hear? So if they're asking us for something, and maybe that really isn't something that's in our scope of work or something that they're asking that is just not really what we do, instead of saying we don't do that, I think it's better to say, here's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we do. And then helping them solve their problem. But what I'm also saying is too, that still maintaining the boundary.
Yes.
Still maintaining the boundary. I'm not saying be a doormat and, blow the scope and, let scope creep become a problem. That's not what I'm saying. It's just choosing your words. choosing your words and choosing a more positive statement.
And I think that is so insightful of you as a leader to not only know that about yourself, but to put that into your messaging here
Yeah,
that, because that's hard to train somebody in, right? If you didn't have it in this way, like, in this company, we tell them, in a positive way, we tell them what we do, we take a pause before we say no, we don't say can't, etc. Right? Like you took the
right,
time to think about how to train someone in that and
right,
what you stand for in that. And I love that so much because that's the like soft skill that really, really, really matters for interior designers. In your
right,
firm, that's
right.
make or break with your clients.
Right, exactly. And again, just gently reminding, like if a team member comes to me with a like, oh, I'm not really sure how to respond, like that's not something that we do. I do that reminder, you know, just remember the words that we try very hard not to use. Tell them what we do. Most clients are responsive to that versus no, or we can't, or we don't. it's it can be kind of it's a negative. It's a
Yeah.
negative. And I want a positive environment for the team, for myself. I want a positive environment.
Heck yeah.
I do not
Mhm.
want to come to an office every day with negativity and just miserable people. So that's a really, a big deal for us. So again, just reminding and just say, hey, just tell them what we do. Just tell them what instead of saying we don't provide that, tell them what we do provide. Like
I love it
it's
all.
it's just a different way of thinking. And it's usually what a more luxury, higher end client, that's more of their expectation. Solve my problem.
Absolutely. And
Right.
I do think to your point about not ignoring the boundary, I talk to a lot of designers, as you know,
Yep.
and many of them, especially earlier on in their business, can confuse being, white glove service and luxury, concierge level, all those things. They can confuse that with not having boundaries.
Right.
Instead, you're saying, no, you hold the boundary, but you do it in a way that feels luxury and that feels like this positive approach and like, we've got you.
Right.
We do this, this, and this. You're doing both at the same time. And I just, oh,
Right.
that so much.
Right. Yeah. Boundaries are, speaking about bringing my husband into the fold. So he's
Yes.
been with the company for a year now, and it's gone very quickly. But it's very interesting his notations of our industry in general as coming from,
Mm,
outside in. And look, he knew that my job wasn't just to fluff pillows. He has always had a little more respect for me than that. So it's not that, it wasn't that, but coming in and seeing all of the moving parts, that we are managing a million moving parts at one time. I think that's what astonished him the most.
mm,
And I think a lot of the general public has no idea,
mm.
really no concept of the amount of work that a designer does on their behalf.
Couldn't agree more. And I think every other designer out there would agree too, that like the
Right,
behind the scenes, and especially in that procurement phase when, you guys are like working like mad, but it's not client facing.
right,
And it is hard to tell them what that's all about because they shouldn't have to know that. That is kind of part of like, you're handling it for them. They don't need to
right,
know exactly how the sausage is made to value it. At the same
right,
time, they're looking for a certain result.
right. So one of the things that we've instituted, I know this is kind of a little off topic,
It's
but it's
okay.
kind of into that. One of the things that we do, so we communicate a lot here. That's also part of what we do. It's, we communicate a lot. But one thing that I instituted quite some time ago, long time ago, were our Friday updates or weekly updates.
Yes.
So that we list out everything that we do for that client that week. So that way, if we are in the project management or procurement stage where we're not doing a lot of designing, that's all been done. We are letting them know. We are letting them know. Here's everything we've done for you this week. So that so that they do know, and it's one, what's great about that is like a lot of our clients, um, they're working Monday through
Right.
Friday. They're not asking us a lot of questions
Right.
Monday through Friday. They would ask questions on Saturdays and Sundays when our office is closed. So we would come in Monday mornings and there would be a barrage of emails Monday morning. And I'm like, ugh, like, how do we, clearly we're not communicating enough. We're not doing something right. So how do we deal with that? And that's when, the for us, Friday updates were born. The minute we started instituting those, I would say we have almost zero emails Monday morning.
Beautiful.
Because every question we think ahead, we think, okay, one, we're going to let them know everything that we've done. And you know what? They might be wondering about A, B, and C. So we're just going to tell them about A, B, and C. We're going to tell them that now, so that we aren't getting questions. Well, what about this? Did you talk to this person? Did this blah 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 blah, whatever. So just, again, problem solving.
Yeah.
What are the understanding what the client may want to know from you, and just giving them that information without them having to ask.
A lot of the things that you're saying, Stephanie, is interesting because you're simply using empathy. You're putting
Yes.
yourself in the client's shoes. You've
Yes.
said that a couple times. And empathy is something that, in communications and in marketing, it's one of the most important tools
Right.
in your toolbox to understand that other person and to be able to see that whole experience from their point of view.
Right.
So when you're thinking about, everything about your client experience, it's creating from a place of empathy, creating that experience from a place of empathy.
Correct.
And I think that everything that you've said, it's off topic, but it's not off topic because all these things are connected.
Right. Right.
You also, all of this documentation that you've created, all of this internal and external messaging is part of that client experience too. And it's part of, again,
Right.
making these decisions.
And it's also important, because of that foundational work that we have and putting these things into words, the team knows why.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The team knows why and understands why we do these things. So I think a lot of people just want to know the why. And
yeah.
if they know the why, then they can get on board.
Having raised 3 boys, I can agree with that. They were always like, why do we have to do this or that? Why do we have to do this or that? Right.
Right.
And if they heard a justification that made sense, not that as a mom, I wasn't always justifying, right? But, just in
Right.
life, if you hear a justification,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they're on
it
board.
helps everybody, little kids,
Sure.
adults,
Sure.
your team, your clients. Sometimes it's knowing the why, and then it's easy to say, well, why are we responding to XYZ in this manner? And then you'd say, well, remember, that value about relationships, because
Yes.
that is what we value. We value that as a company. It is very, very important to us. So it's not just, and that is the thing. If you don't believe it, then it's going to be worthless.
If you don't believe it and live it.
Correct. Then it is worthless. Then it is
Yes.
a complete waste of your time.
Right. And that's the other thing too, is, none of this messaging of any kind you can't put it on like a mask. You can't put it on. It has to come from an authentic place.
Yep.
You're not going to, first of all, you're never going to remember it. because
No,
it's not
no.
real.
And it
It
can't
has
be,
to come from your heart as a
and you
business
know
owner.
what, Deb? I believe too, it can't be something that you aspire to believe in.
Mm-hmm. You
It,
have to already be there.
yes. Yes, because if it's not something you're already living, if you're not living it and breathing it already, and it's something you're aspiring to, oh, you're backing yourself into a corner.
I can see that because yeah, a lot of designers too talking about like the Friday emails.
Yeah,
If we talk about that all the time too. In well, part of my process, I say that I'm going to send out the Friday emails, but we don't really do it. Well, why don't we really do it? Right? Oh,
right,
because I just don't think that it really matters that much. Well, okay, then let's talk about that. That's a whole different
right.
conversation.
That is a whole different conversation. That's a whole different conversation. And look, I can understand you can make an excuse for almost anything.
Yeah. And
You
by the
can make an
way,
excuse. And you know, if the excuse is I don't have time, well, then that's a time management issue. That's a time management issue. And it's again, everything is about communication. And I have found that with clients, if you tell them your expectations and how you work and what your boundaries are from the beginning, they are fine with that. So one of those is all of our clients know that after 1 o'clock on Fridays, we cannot accommodate site visits. We cannot accommodate meetings. We can't do anything because we are putting together our Friday updates. It says it on our in our
set a
welcome packet.
boundary.
It's in our welcome
Okay.
packet. Like it is so it's when they say, well, can you do a site visit at 3 o'clock on Friday? They don't even ask. Like it's not even, and our builders know it. Everybody who we, bring on that we work with, our builders, when we have our first meetings with them, they know how our office runs and how our office, works. Of course, if there's some crazy expectation and something horrible is happening and you have to be on site at Friday at 3 o'clock, well, fine. But there's exception, almost exception to everything. But in general, as long as you tell people up front that after 1 o'clock on Fridays, this is what we are doing. You're saying this is important. You're saying that it matters. And you're also
And
setting that,
setting the time,
and you're
setting a
setting the
boundary.
time and you're setting the boundary. And as long as you say it, people get it and they have no problem with it. So from the get-go, so again, saying I don't have time that's a time management issue.
Right.
And that's a communication issue with saying, and because if you believe it, you'll make it happen.
Yes. And this is not to say, I also always say, like, everybody's design firm is different. Your businesses are all different.
100%.
And I've even talked to people that are like, well, I have a client Zoom call like every Wednesday. Okay, maybe they don't need a Friday update then because they're updating them on Wednesday or whatever. There's different reasons why maybe
Sure.
that this particular thing is not the thing that you need in your business. But just to
Correct.
say
It's
that
just an example. Yeah.
if you say it's a priority, it should be a priority. Like
But
make
and that
time for it and
right. And that's what I mean about don't pick values and things like that are aspirational.
yeah,
Pick ones that are real and true. And then it
yeah,
becomes a lot easier. But
yeah,
it's not pie in the
absolutely.
sky.
No, 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 no.
It's not pie in the sky.
So then let's segue that a little bit more into when you guys wrote the job description for Tom. So he is your chief operations officer.
Yes.
And so bringing him in, I almost envision it like you were looking to like not exactly split yourself in two, so not cloning yourself, but like taking pieces of what you were managing and put those onto him, right?
Right, right. Because I knew, so my husband his background a little bit was, he retired as a police captain.
Yeah.
So he ran a precinct. So
Manager.
yeah, he was in law enforcement for 29 years. So in my mind, I'm like, if he can run a precinct, he can run the office. Um, right. But of course he had to learn enough about the industry.
Right.
But as far as, he took a lot of the operational stuff. Again, we own our building. So it's not huge. It's about 4,000 square feet. But we have almost an acre of property,
Mm,
like right on a major,
mm.
major road. about like 30,000 cars go by every day. But we have a massive amount of trees. So yeah, there's a lot of trees. There's it's just the building itself is just a huge maintenance. And even that in and of itself,
Yeah.
removing that,
Yeah. Just managing the facility piece.
yes, taking care of the gutters, you know,
Please.
right? I mean, it's just all these things that when you own a
Yes.
building versus when you rent that
Yes.
are, become, and I'm trying to, I'm trying to run the design team. I'm trying to run the design team. I'm doing all the financials and all the building. It just became, if I was going to have any type of growth, I knew that a big segment of what I was doing needed to go onto someone else's plate. So,
Love it.
so that was, and that's another thing that Gail helped us do as well, was really figuring out what hats Tom would wear.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I do want to like distinguish too, when we're talking about writing these pieces, it's not that it's not being a writer that matters.
Oh,
I've long said, I mean, I'm at the core, I'm a writer, but I kind of get paid to think for and with my clients. It's a thinking thing, just like with
right,
Gail. Like as a coach, she's strategizing, she's thinking. So we're thinking about you and your business and your clients and your team members and your goals and all the ways to, build these pieces in. It's not like, okay, Stephanie, you tell me, tell me what your values are and I'll write them pretty. It's not that, right?
no, no,
So just to say, it's not for any designer when you're thinking about working with someone to help you create any messaging in your business for whatever reason, and you need a third party, because I really think you do, because it's really hard to be in your own head as the business owner. You
I
don't have
agree.
perspective. That it's not about writing it pretty. It's about having somebody to be able to think, having somebody to be able to get it all out of your head and help you sort through it
Right,
and help you say, hey, okay, this thing is really important to your clients. That needs to be front and center in this piece of messaging. This thing is really important to you for your team. We need to put that front and center over here
right,
and figure all these things out.
right. No, I agree with that 100%. Um, a third party, I mean, look, it depends on, it really just, again, knowing your why. We talked about that earlier, knowing why. Like everybody needs to know why.
Yeah.
You even need to know why.
Yeah.
You even need to know why. Like my feeling is it's what is the why? Like if you are happy with the way that your business is, then stay happy.
Yeah.
Stay
Agreed
happy.
completely.
Stay happy. Keep
Yeah.
keep on going. If you would like things to change, evolve, or grow, an outside perspective can be insanely valuable.
Completely agree.
Because sometimes
Completely.
sometimes it's hard to see our own weaknesses and strengths.
Or blind spots. I just call them blind spots because yeah, sometimes the strengths and like I was saying before, differentiators are kind of at the center of the kind of messaging that I create.
Right.
Designers are very blind to their own differentiators because they're just like doing the work and they're like, isn't this how every other designer does it? Isn't this how every other designer thinks? And the answer is usually no. The
Yes.
answer is you would be very surprised at how different your brain is processing whatever, or the things that you say to your clients might be completely different than does another designer that is over here, you think doing the exact same things.
Right. Right. I mean, they can be very, very, very different. And having an outside perspective is huge. Again, if you want to change, evolve, or grow.
Yes.
If you want to do any of those three things,
Yes.
having and honestly, like if it's something you're just like some people financially, it may be I don't have the means to excuse me, to hire whoever or go this route. There are other ways you could reach out to someone in the industry or even outside the industry
Mhm.
that you admire and say, can I take you out to lunch
Mhm.
and can I have an hour of your time?
Yeah.
Most people are gracious. If they have that time, they will give it.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. I'm an advocate for staying inside the industry for that because I do think, as to what you said about Tom, that there was a lot that he knew about the industry, but then there were things that he didn't understand. And I do think
correct.
there's a lot of nuance.
There's a
So,
lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuance. So, with him coming on and again, even just taking care of the maintenance of the building, reviewing our insurance. I mean, it sounds, and it's very, very boring. That is very boring. No designers like, yay, insurance. But
very
it was
important.
something that we were well insured.
Yeah.
But now we are very well insured
Good.
because he was able to come in, work with our insurance agent, making sure that we did have everything that we needed. As far as, that's the one thing that as a designer, you don't want to be caught is to be underinsured.
I know. You just saying that, now everybody's going to be like, oh, shoot. Now I want my own Tom to talk to my insurance agent, whoever.
Right. And it's because, it takes time.
Oh, yeah.
These
And
are
it
things
is
that
so
take
boring.
time and so
Yes.
boring. Again, like I said, no designer is like, whoopee, I'm gonna
Yep.
I'm gonna talk to my insurance agent today.
Yeah.
But him coming on board and taking that, doing that and making that call and looking into the
Mhm.
different types of insurance and look, it really is kind of a one and done.
Yeah.
He plans, in a few months just to do a little review, nothing extensive. But really I would say every 3 to 4 years, I guess you should do a complete overhaul and really look at everything. Because again, you could be in trouble.
Yeah. Your numbers can change in ways that you just aren't processing that's different. I mean, that happens just within your family, right? Like you
Right.
need to think and re-up
Yeah.
every few
Well, and
years. Same thing in your business.
well, especially you have to look at, like, I know that our receiving warehouses, most of the ones here do not insure your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is
Right.
something that is shocking to a lot of people. That if their warehouse burnt down, they owe us nothing, almost nothing. So that means if you have, $500,000 worth of furniture at a receiving warehouse and it burns down, it's not the client's problem because you haven't delivered it yet. So that's what you have to look at. You may be insured now, for $300,000 worth of furnishings or whatever.
Mhm.
But if you've got, 1.5 million flowing in and out in the same time period, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. So I know, again, I don't want to chat too much about insurance because it's
Yeah.
very boring. But
No,
again,
but it makes sense.
but
Like,
just having come in and someone looking at that,
yeah.
and putting eyes on it, is huge because I certainly didn't have time.
Yep.
I certainly didn't have time.
And so even understanding those things and making those decisions, okay, these are the hats that Tom is going to wear. You guys actually wrote out a job description, correct?
So with him, we wrote out bullet points.
Okay.
For him, it was bullet point.
Okay.
Because when he was brought in, we hadn't we did all this work with our values and all of that after he was on board.
Got it.
So he had his bullet points, which was for his position, it was perfect.
Yeah.
But
That's
where
good
it
enough.
really came into play is when we were looking to hire a senior designer.
I was just going to ask you because you told me offline that you recently hired that.
Yes.
So I was going to see, how did that come in
So
for that
that
one?
was a really beautifully done, nicely done job description. And like I said, so Tom, I mean, again, Tom's there are reasons is because we didn't have all those nitty-gritties really worked out, but he had very clear bullet points, which was really, and also the bullet point, and we have a organizational chart as well.
Oh, nice.
The organizational chart is the visual
Yes.
that also shows what his responsibilities where mine are, and then everyone underneath. So we've got that visual, and we also had his bullet points. And then, like I said, once we got all this foundational stuff done, then we were able to much, much more easily put together a job description, have a really nice, accurate who we are statement.
Yes.
You know, because if someone's looking to come and work for your firm, they want to know who you are if they don't already. You know, and you should have some of those values in there, you know, because again, you want to attract people that have those same values. You know, if, you know, there are people in this world who, you know what, they don't value relationships. They have a different take. You know, they have a different take. They're like, maybe they believe that, you know, business is hardcore and, you know, it's just relationships aren't important to them.
Yeah.
So if you're interviewing someone where that is not, they don't have a desire, they're not hospitality minded,
Yeah.
or they don't see the value in maintaining a
Mhm.
relationship, then even though they may have amazing skills,
Yeah. You can't train that value. You can't train it.
you can't.
Yeah. You're
You
gonna have
can't.
problems.
Right. So it helped really write that description for us, but then it really, really was helpful in the interview process
Mm.
because we asked direct questions relating to our values.
So can you think of an example?
Oh my gosh. So
Like-
this was like 6 months ago. So they're more scenario questions.
I was wondering, is that
Yes.
what it was? Yeah.
They're more because it's you don't want to say because if you clearly they already knew ahead of time what our values were. So, you know, they want to show up and do well.
Right.
So if you give them more of a scenario question, then you're getting more of a real answer.
Right. Because they can't
Right.
tell, yeah, where am I fitting within what Stephanie's looking for? I'm just responding like how I
Right.
would respond to this scenario. So
Right. And I think one of them
Good.
was it was like you receive an email from a client that asks you to do something that is outside of the scope.
Yeah.
How would you respond?
Yeah.
Right. And if,
Yeah.
you know, really if they just said, well, I would email back and let them know that
We don't do that.
that this
You're
is
like-
not in your scope.
No.
That's
Yeah.
That's not showing to me that we have that same value.
Yeah.
So yeah, all those scenario questions are perfect to showcase your,
So
you know,
good.
your values.
So good.
Yeah.
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 And you really are taking it from, particularly when it comes to how they interface with your clients and how they communicate with your clients. You're taking it from almost like I'm fumbling around for my words, but you're moving
Okay.
it into that it's a more embodied value for them and more natural for them to respond in the ways that you want them to. You're taking it from like, do this, not that.
Right.
You don't even have to as much do that because they more are naturally wired that way and want to do it the way that you do it anyway.
Right. Exactly. And if you have people that are wired the same way you are and the same way that your firm is, then that's half the battle.
It's absolutely half the battle, if not more. I love
Yeah.
that so much.
It's half the battle.
Love it.
And, you know, again, seeking help is not a weakness.
No, not by any stretch, it's not. And so how many people do you have on your team right now?
So there are 5.
Wow.
So we're still pretty small. We're
I
still
mean,
pretty small.
It depends on where you're coming from because,
Right.
you know, to somebody who has just themselves and like an assistant, then 5 feels big. But I know what you're saying because you've
Right.
had a big team.
Yes.
Pre-COVID, you had a really big team.
Yes. When I
So-
had 5,000 square feet of retail and design,
Yeah.
most of my time I had both concurrently. So when I had both of those at the same time, it was a fairly big team. Not something that I probably would desire to do again. It's very, very different because if you're going to maintain and you still want to do some designing,
Yeah.
you become a manager
Yes.
unless you hire someone to do the managing. Right? So
Yes.
again, how do you even hire someone? How would you hire someone to do that managing when you don't have good messaging? So now with the way that I have everything, set up, if I did grow, I would have all of that so that I could very easily articulate to someone how I would want people to
Yeah.
be quote unquote managed
Yeah.
or,
You you
right.
technically could more readily bring somebody on to be like your business manager.
Correct. Because you're basically saying, this is who I am. This is
Yeah.
who we are. And the thing is, it's not even just me. It's also, this is who we are.
Yeah.
Collectively, it's a
Yes.
we.
Yeah.
It is a we. It's not a me.
Yeah. As a firm, as a company, as a team, as,
Right.
yeah, the collective, like you said. I
Right.
love all of that.
Yeah. Like this is who we are.
So what would you say if you had to pick? I mean, I know that you guys created several things in addition to these, your Tom's bullet points and your senior designer's job description. You also did like your mission, vision, values kind of stuff,
Yep. Yep.
and defined your culture and did an identity statement. If you had to pick, one thing or two things out of all of those, if there was a world in which you couldn't do them all, but you
Right.
had to create only
Right.
two, which two would you say were the most vital for you? Values, probably, it sounds
Values.
like. Yeah.
It's without values, you don't get a good culture statement. You don't get a good vision statement. You don't get a good um for lack of a better word, job description,
Yeah.
which means you don't attract good people, right? So if without those values, you don't get those things. You don't get good marketing.
Yeah.
Because if you're working with a marketing team, if you don't know who you are, how are they supposed to know who you are,
Right.
right?
Right.
How is that marketing team supposed to represent you
Right.
when you don't even know who you are? So, being able to say in writing, this is who we are. Now, help me market.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So really those values are really what drives, a good website, a good marketing strategy, a good job description,
Mhm.
a good employee handbook, a good
Mhm.
website. Like, I mean, it really is. Again, you would have talked to me 15 years ago, I'd have been like, that's dumb. But no, it's not.
Do you think that I know you said this process of picking the values took you a long time, you had to mull it over, but do you think in some ways, I'm wondering just from the process that I do with my clients, in some ways, I'm thinking, I wonder if you were pretty clear in your own head, even though you needed the words to represent and you needed to narrow it down, you were more clear about your values and who you were and who you wanted your firm to be collectively than on anything else. And maybe that's part of the reason everything else springboarded off of that. Because sometimes I have people come to me and it's like, oh, they have this vision is really, really clear for them and it's
Right.
really solid, but maybe their values they haven't thought about as much. And so we can use that vision as a springboard more so. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I could see how the values seems like a very natural thing to be the one thing and the hub because it's at the core of who you are.
Right.
But I am wondering if there was more clarity there to begin with over anything else in your case.
Hmm. You mean before I had those values written out?
Before you started working with Gail, before you started doing all of this creating these foundational pieces, I wonder if it was
Um,
kind of already in there a little more.
Probably. It
Else.
just probably wasn't as self-contained.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like now it's like self-contained,
Yes.
right? It's
You kind of,
self-contained
yeah, you
instead
kind
of
of
just
knew, oh, I value that. Oh, I value that. Oh, I value that. If you really thought about it, you would
right,
think these scattered thoughts.
right. And I mean, look, people, I think human beings have multiple values in general.
Yes.
Um, but it's not about all of them.
No.
It's about the core. It's the core
It's
values.
prioritizing.
It's prioritizing
Yeah.
and what are we what to the core?
Yes.
What are we?
Yes.
So I think, look, it was very difficult. It was really
Yeah.
difficult. So and again, Tom was a huge help. He had a lot of patience. He had a lot of patience. Coming from a different field where it's everything is like this,
Yeah.
and for this, I can't do this. I can't, I need to mull it. I need to, really, really believe it, live it,
Yeah.
and breathe it. So, it is a process. It's not, going to the Chick-fil-A takeout and ordering up a value.
No, no, it is not.
Right.
And
That's why I said, for some people, reaching out and asking for help is clearly is not a weakness.
no, because these things are in you already. And that's also how I want to work with my clients. Again, not creating it out of thin air and going, hey, try this on. Does this fit you? No,
Right.
not like that. Like it's in you. Let's find it. Let's uncover it. Let's pull it out. And sometimes we got to go really deep because it's buried under all this other like daily stuff.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And I can only imagine from your, where you sit in this, that it's probably even more difficult for you.
I mean, it can be pretty hard, but I think that is part of the reason I'm drawn to this work is because I'm good at it. I'm good at helping draw
Right.
people out. I mean, you I have story after story of just, being out in the world and people telling me their deep life stories or whatever. It's just who I am, right?
Right.
And asking the right questions. And that's another thing, though, that the third party comes in because we don't tend to ask ourselves the right questions.
True.
We tend to think we are. Well,
Right.
what do I think about this? What do I think about that? No, we need somebody to get in there. We need somebody to be curious about us. We need somebody to follow the rabbit trails in conversation.
Right.
And that's what brings these things out. We need somebody else to take notice of something and go, I wonder if it's this.
Right.
Let's think about that.
Right. And it's very similar to what I think a designer does visually
1,000%.
for our
Like
clients every day.
so similar. And yes, like I would say the work that you guys do is very hard, et cetera, but you're drawn to it because you're very good at it, right? And a lot of it you do intuitively, a lot of it,
Right.
Yeah, I'm working in words, you're working in, materials, fabric, space planning, and all the other
Right.
things, as well as all the project planning. So
Right.
it's just, different mediums that we're good at.
Right. And for you, you're right. I think it is definitely asking those right questions. The questions that are like, oh, okay.
Never thought about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's great. And I think I'm very happy that I put the work in to do it and to get it done
Yeah.
because it's foundational. It's foundational.
It's invaluable. And I know you're going to have like again and again see applications that you're like, I didn't even realize I can apply it to this. And I'm so glad I did it kind of thought.
100%.
Love it.
100%.
Well, Stephanie, we talked for an hour.
Oh,
We
God,
already talked
ready?
for an hour. It goes so
Yeesh.
fast with you. I have so much fun talking to you.
Same. I
Thank
always love
you
talking to you.
so much. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to say?
Oh my gosh.
The end of it?
Have me on again.
I will.
We'll talk about a ton of other topics. Like where
We'll
do I
talk
begin?
about a
Especially
zillion
with
other things.
I'll just add one little thing about brand messaging.
Please.
And I think it goes into one of the things that our industry struggles with and the overall brand messaging of the design industry as a whole. I wish that we had some, like realtors. Like realtors have an amazing marketing team behind them, with national advocacy and
Yes.
things like that. So much so that they make, a very nice somewhat standardized amount when they sell a home that clients don't even bat an eye. Right? And
There's no question about how
there
they
is no
charge.
question how they charge, what the value that they bring, and people people without even a blink of an eye pay it. And I think as a brand messaging of the design industry as a whole, if we had that same type of messaging, what our value is, that I think it would be better for everybody in the
Everyone.
industry. So that,
Totally agree.
right. So those are those are my like two little cents, and maybe we
Got me
can,
thinking. You've got me thinking. You've got me thinking as I go to the wanting to go to the core of need
yep,
and wanting to be able to get, designers to get hired and earn their value. That's what
yes,
I'm trying to create here. So,
right, and being valued for their time.
yes.
So but that's overarching. That's the industry as
Yes,
that's poor messaging on the industry as a whole.
absolutely true.
So
Okay, we're going to work on this. I
we
like
are
it.
going to work on it.
Okay. Stephanie, thank you
Yeah.
so, so much again. I appreciate you
you.
so much. I adore you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank
And
you.
you take care. Have a great
Okay, you
rest of your
too.
day, and we'll
All
have
right.
you on again soon.